We're glad to have you back. Now, according to reports from the CBN, most recent monthly economic report, the total value of Nigeria's merchandise trade decreased to $7.9 billion in May 2025, down from $8.3 billion in April and $7.8 billion in the corresponding period of 2024. While the lower trade value month-on-month reflects broad weaknesses across both exports and import trade activities, the decline was primarily driven by a 6% month-on-month decline in imports trade to about $3.3 billion. Similarly, export trade value fell 3% month-on-month to $4.6 billion. And despite subdued trade performance, Nigeria records a trade surplus of $1.4 billion in May, slightly higher than $1.3 billion and $400 million recorded in April 2025 and May 2024, respectively. Well, let's stay with this development and basically some burning economic issues across the board, ranging from, of course, inflation figures and expected GDP as we move to the last quarter. We're already in the last quarter of the year, a few weeks to the end of the year. My guest is Dr. Paul Alaje. He is a partner and senior economist with SPM Professionals. Dr. Alaje, I must thank you so much. He joins us live from our Abuja studios. It's good to see you, Mr. Alaje. Let me say, Dr. Alaje. Now, let's start this conversation, honestly, with what you make of Nigeria's economic projection at this time. Let me use that language, if you allow me. Now, we've seen inflation dwindling. We've seen GDP figures looking brilliant, picking up. But generally, you are an economist playing both Nigeria, across the African continent and all. What is your assessment of the state of the economy, considering comments and commendations from the likes of the IMF and World Banks, though at times they also address some of the shortcomings?
Yeah, thank you so very much. I have seen the report from IMF, and I've also read the recent report by the World Bank. A number of things that we agreed with and a number of them that we don't agree with. I tell you, the projection for the real GDP for organization for Nigeria will be between 3.8% to 4.3%. Largely, we expect the GDP to remain at almost current growth rate with only 0.5% difference in the lower band and the upper band. What we expect at the year-end GDP figures is about 3.8 to 4.8. We expect exchange rate to remain stable at about 1,420 to about 1,550, given the fact that central bank has left complete flotation, which I think there is no country in the world that stays with absolute flotation for long. What many countries do, whether covertly or overtly, is to run what we call managed float. You know that I've had this conversation with you late 2023 and sufficient part of 2024, while I continue to mention my advocacy for managed float. I must thank the central bank and the governor for adopting this method, because it will bring confidence on the mind of investors, because they are sure of what exchange rate will be by the time they want to invest or they want to leave the economy. We also hope that the oil production will be around 1.6 to 1.7. I would not say 1.8 because that is not the numbers that I have. What we have is 1.6 to 1.7 average, which of course will be better than what we had about 4 or 5 years ago. So we expect that. My concern is that we might see a little bit spike in inflation figures. The Bureau of Statistics is yet to release their report, but we are envisaging a little spike in, I said inflation, I beg your pardon, unemployment figures. We have seen inflation, which is a key macroeconomic variable, at about 18%, using the new base year. I keep saying that the new base year spells out completely different from what we had in the previous base year. So as the previous base year continued to climb, if you check 2024 to 2023, at this time, 2024, 2023, the numbers were climbing. Given the base year that we have adopted, the number is expected to go down further. And I'll come to the question of where will the impact be. If you ask me, I will respond to that. Then I look at the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is supposed to be around 4 to 4.5%. We're also going to make a gap of 0.5 there. Then our external reserve is currently 42%. Kudos again to Monetary Authority. I expect that with the energy that has been put in place, this should grow significantly to $44 billion before the end of the year. By 31st December I expect $44 billion. Not just based on what I expect, but when you run the numbers, based on the growth rate, we expect that that number will get to that level. There are a number of rationale that we need to look at for this, but I don't know if time will permit me. We can look at rationale for inflation, rationale for exchange rate, rationale for growth, and also the oil sector. These will be in the coming period key drivers. I understand that Nigeria wishes or wants the non-oil sector to play significant role, but I tell you, Dangote refinery will keep playing major role, and now that Dangote is also thinking of maybe planning to possibly double the capacity of that refinery, that is a major game changer for Nigeria. It's going to save us of import. It's going to boost inflow. When Dangote starts selling to other countries, including African countries and beyond, that will send major signal to Nigeria. I think where government need to pay attention to is the angle of impact. The impact needs to be felt. It's not enough for the numbers to be looking good. It must also reflect in the life of the majority of the people. That links it to World Bank report of 139 million people who, according to World Bank, are now living in poverty. In fact, World Bank report in December 2024 for all African countries, it was 158 million Nigerians. That's over 500 million population that live in poverty, and 464 million of them live in absolute poverty, abject poverty. So what can we do as a nation to redeem people from poverty, penury? That should be the energy of government. And I can say that for FCT, I've seen infrastructure. How do we plug in people, adopt a method that more people can be engaged? That is why I say I have worry for unemployment may spike a little in the coming quarter. Other than that, the numbers we have, how the next quarter will look like if the assumptions, some of the things, the assumptions that will guide this remain the same, then you might see this growth around 4 to 4.5%. You might see inflation around 17% and so on and so forth. But we need to be careful that when inflation is coming down, ordinarily, we should be seeing the reflection absolutely in the life of people. The difference I've told you is the adjustment in the base year. That is the difference right there that people might not be able to measure it on the immediate. But in the long run, which of course, maybe after say 12, 13 months, we might start seeing some difference. But I need to put a caveat. I mentioned that growth is expected to grow, to be for the end of this year. This may not be my projection for next year. For next year, I see growth still remains positive. Why? Because it's pre-election year. But one thing that holds Nigeria economy very strongly right now is relative stability. Exchange rate is the factor there. Election is coming in 2027. 2026 is pre-election year. What are we going to do such that those who spend election money, politicians, giving money to delegates, organizing events, looking at party members and party leaders, what are we going to do that dollar spend will not get out of hand? And we have seen consistently in the space of 4 years for pre-election period that we have always had issues around our exchange rate. I leave that to those who should take decision on ensuring that we don't get out of hand. That, of course, central bank alone will not do. That of our fiscal authority will not do. That the 36 state governor, the FCT minister, and of course, Mr. President, must take responsibility that their party and all opposition parties agree for the sake of Nigerians and Nigeria, they don't use dollars or any foreign currency as a medium of exchange for the next election.
Interesting breakdown, I must say, Mr. Alaje. I like the fact that you went, there are almost all aspects of it, touched on every important aspect of Nigerian economy, and very importantly, as we move into the election year, and those basic things that used to happen, and maybe they won't happen as we move ahead. But you said something very important there, that you expect foreign reserves to hit about $44 billion US. Now, if that happens, do you think that what will be the impact on naira to dollar exchange rate, which has been relatively stable in recent times? Do you think that we might go lower? Many expect that might happen. That's on one side. Then on the other side, too, another two-in-one question is, what do we do, again, to address the fallout of this, considering all of the initiatives that have already heard by government being instituted? But I know that there are still some quick wins. You're an economist. What are those things that can be done that the man on the streets will definitely feel the impact and say, yes, truly, government asks us to fasten our belts? I think we've gotten to the point where we can start to loosening gradually.
Yeah, so if you do that, I'm looking at 11 to 12 months cover. I think that will extend to about 45 billion US dollars. That's import cover. What that means is that there is confidence. People will not necessarily want high naira for the dollar. So it's expected that with the central bank support and its involvement in regulating the markets, exchange rate is expected to come down if you have that. Like I said, what can kill that gain is 2026. And how do I mean? By the time politicians start spending the US dollars, the gain that we are seeing gradually, relative stability, please note that stability is not the same thing as improvement. When economists say that there is stability in the economy, we are saying there is no more fluctuation. You can now predict what exchange rate will be. We are not saying that naira today is better off than what it was last year. They are two different things. I am now saying that if we can manage this process correctly, going forward, we might start seeing little improvement, which is what your question border on. That is, naira that was 1,500 beginning of this year, we can see it end around 1,400. Now we have seen it to 1,440, 130, sometimes 450, and highest point of 1,500 that it started with. That boundary is manageable. But here is the point. We expect that if the central bank within the last quarter manage with trade authority appropriately, we might see that exchange rate go to 1,400. When they do that, it will have implication in your pocket, Mr. Tolu, because for all imported goods, after a while, 6 months to 1 year, that importers are bringing new items that we don't have in Nigeria, and those that are producing in Nigeria to affect components of their imports. Prices I expect to go down. Yes, it will not be overnight, because for price downward review is usually sticky, unlike the way it leapfrogs when prices are going up. So here, that's the point. It can come down, but it will be draggy. In fact, in economics, we say prices are sticky when you are having a downward review. And that's the implication. What does it now mean when we have more foreign reserves and we have perhaps prices going down, inflation? Well, of course, we in real term, not because we adjusted this year now, inflation in real term, we now adjust. People will feel the direct impact. And that is why when we adopted flotation, I was completely against it, completely against absolute flotation for the moment. And I'm happy that central bank quickly looked at the market and looked at what is possible, and we are now operating managed load. That means we do not peg our currency, which I don't also support, is another extreme. But we are there in the middle to see when naira needs it. And I can tell you that Keynesian economists support this. It's not just, we cannot 100% follow the classical economists. We are not a socialist economy. We are not a communist economy, but we should be weary to be a pure market economy, because it's another extreme. As an economist, I can tell you, I read across the line at the two extremes. It's always good to find yourself in a place where policy, managing policy is relatively better and convenient. Not just because we want the numbers or the books to look good, but we want people's life, quality of life to be better. Why we read economics is not just to pile up degrees. It is because we want people's living standard to be better. And that is the goal right there. So I must say that it will affect people's life very positively, and it's something that is good for us to do. So what have we done in the last 2 quarters for us to have seen this improvement? Functional Dangote refinery, we have been able to put to settle the rival between the Pengansin and Dangote that could have led to a major crisis. Exchange rate by now would have been out of the world. Again, we've been hearing rumors of people bringing in more PMS and other products from other sources. I tell you that yes, if you think the price will be cheaper, it might be costlier for our economy. It might be cheap in our fuel tank, but it might be costlier for our economy. Why? Because when you do that, you will certainly make demand for the dollar. I tell you that you have a year that you need to be very careful about, not the year of your election, but the year that comes before the election. So all of these, I think we need to put into perspective. and study carefully the implication such that we will have a good year and we will not face the kind of economic quagmire we are gradually coming out of.
So what would now be the outlook if we look at all of this figures? We have approximately a week to go in October, 8 weeks to the end of 2025. So many would say we're already projecting and reprojected. We expect the tax laws to get into implementation by January 2026. That's also the very big one that everyone has been back and forth also regarding that. So what do you make of all of this and how that affects the outlook of Nigeria's economy moving forward?
Well, for me, like I projected earlier, I expect growth rates to be between 4 to 4.5%, and I expect inflation to be around 17%, considering the new base year period. Because of this time last year, for the quarter, inflation was still going up. So, but remember that every December, you might see relative spike in inflation. Whether that will happen with this new rebase number is yet to be observed. Like I said, it's an outlier period that we are studying, and whatever outcome it gives us, we will have to look at it for another 1 year to now look at the relationship between the two. But for end of the year, generally, the things that I expected is that the foreign reserve is expected to rebound, to even go higher than what we have. If the decisions we took in the last 6 months, we are going to stand by them to help boost FX inflow into Nigeria and also boost confidence into the economy. If we don't, then we might be reversing our own gain. And I also think that the fuel production per day, talking about crude production per day, because of relative peace within the Niger Delta region, should go to about 1.6, 1.7 million barrels. Already, we are not achieving what we projected in the budget. The budget is looking at about 2 million barrels a day, but that is not exactly what we are doing. There's still a shortfall of 400,000 barrels a day from what we have projected. So this is where FRS come in. FRS seems to have been meeting the target in the new administration of the chairman right there. And the hope is that a number of persons often ask me that, FRS claim they are achieving target. How come federal government is still borrowing? And I only laugh because when FRS make money, not all the money gets to the federal government. And I just want to provide some education here. Not all the money gets to the federal government. The money FRS make most of the time is for the federation. The VAT is for the federation. Then you also see money from corporate income tax. You see the one withholding tax. So there are different, it's not all the money that goes to the federal government. Yes, revenue has increased. So the state's revenue has increased, and local government share and federal government, all of them have increased. But all of them cannot be given. In some cases, there is a lag between the time revenue is made, whether crude through or through an NPCL or from from FIRS or from custom for immigration. Right. There is a lag between the time those monies are made and the need for government. So sometimes government may take money for short term, for most especially capital expenditure, as we advise. All right,
that's our time. I must thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje, senior partner and senior economist at SPM Professionals. Thank you, as always, for sparing your time to join the show. We appreciate this.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, then.